climate has changed.
This was a night that reshaped Australia's electoral landscape. A teal wave washing away two ministers in Melbourne, including a man talked about as a future Prime Minister.
Kooyong's never going to be quite the same again.
In wealthy parts of Sydney, the sweeping sentiment for change was similar. Traditional Liberal heartland, again, overwhelmed.
We want our vote, our federal vote, to count towards the changes that we want to see.
Some of the coalition's most outspoken moderate men are now gone.
This has been more severe than I expected.
Replaced with moderate women, independent of the major parties.
People for way too long have been feeling like they have been neglected, ignored and taken for granted, and people wanted to be genuinely represented on the issues that are important to us here in Mackellar.
Like the other so-called Teal candidates, Sophie Scomps was inspired to stand for her Northern Beaches seat of Mackellar by independent Zali Steggall. She was unhappy with the way concerns about climate change had been mocked, at how women had been treated in Canberra, and that taxpayer funds had been so often funnelled into marginal seats. Although the Tesla-driving doctor is unlikely to hold the balance of power, she wants to use her profile in Canberra to derail the plans of pro-coal politicians.
We saw that the coalition was hanging on to the past as grimly as they could, and yes, fossil fuels has been a wonderful for our economy and our country, but it's time to move forward again. We know that the rest of the world is moving away from fossil fuels, and if we want to maintain our current standard of living, then we have to modernise.
In Brisbane, where there were no Teals, the weekend wave was green.
And they said we couldn't do it.
Although the party picked up more lower house seats, it's the Senate where the Greens will be key to passing any of the government's contentious legislation. A promise to allow no new coal mines, one possible sticking point with Labor.
We'll be saying very clearly, we need action on coal and gas. That has got to be the priority. And in particular, we can't be opening up new coal and gas mines. You can't put the fire out while you're pouring petrol on it.
The Teals and Greens did well in parts of the country where Scott Morrison was on the nose, but his deputy, the Nationals leader Barnaby Joyce, was reportedly toxic in those electorates too. The junior coalition partner didn't actually lose any seats. In fact, it's poised to be even more influential within the new opposition. However, it's increasingly likely Mr Joyce will face a leadership contest early next week. Some of his colleagues are unhappy with him.
Some Liberals are blaming you for the loss, particularly in those inner seats, because of your conservative views, because of your views on net zero. Well, what do you say to them?
I'm not in the Liberal Party. I'm in the Nationals. It's like
but it's a coalition.
Hang on, I'm not in the Liberal Party. I'm in the Nationals. It'd be just the same to say I'm going to blame Tim Wilson for a loss of support in regional areas.
Some of the marginal seat Liberal MPs who fared best on Saturday have been outspoken on the need to curb carbon emissions, like former New South Wales State Minister Andrew Constance.
We've got to be honest about climate change.
He's currently narrowly ahead in the race for the marginal New South Wales South Coast seat of Gilmore, an area still scarred by the Black Summer bushfires.
We were impacted by one of the largest global events when it comes to climate change.
I love it that he's on my team because he calls it, and he calls it straight.
Today, he declined to criticise Scott Morrison's leadership directly, but if elected, he wants the coalition to be more focused on uniting people and working constructively on the big policy challenges the nation faces.
The Liberal Party has to go back and reflect on why Sir Robert Menzies set us up. Now, the party exists for the community. It's got to reflect community values. It's got to make sure that nobody's left behind in terms of what changes we need to see in our world.
In Sydney, public suggestions from Conservatives that the Federal Party needs to move further to the right to win back voters horrifies leading moderates.
The lesson needs to be learned that if you move too far to the right, you lose the base, you lose the middle ground of Australian politics, and that's what we saw happen on the weekend. I mean, it would take a special kind of dishonesty to try and argue that the Liberal Party should go further to the right.
New South Wales State Treasurer Matt Keane believes after this election the remaining Liberal moderates need to be much more outspoken.
The reason the party lost is because they were more busy focusing on these fringe issues and culture wars than substantive policy to move our country forward, to grow our economy and lift the living standards for every single person in the country.
He argues the coalition should now be trying to recruit some of the victorious Teals and women like them to become more relevant again in the party's traditional heartland.
There is no way Allegra Spender, Kylie Tink, Sophie Scomps should have been running as independents. They should have been running as Liberals because they represent our values and the aspirations of our communities. And the sooner we reach out to these people and include them in our party, the better off and stronger our party will be.
Hi, I'm Lee Sales. Thanks for watching this story. If you'd like to watch more of 7:30's stories, they are on the left of your screen. And tap on the button below to subscribe and get the latest from ABC News.